So I will put you into school because you're an idiot sandwich. The fact that this has been traditionally published is honestly an embarrassment for the publishing industry.
Is it possible to love a book in which the protagonist bangs his clone?
Hi, welcome back. I am officially back. That video, my last video in which I was searching for a 5 stars, took everything out of me, okay? But we are at the halfway point of the year, which feels surreal. Honestly, June, where was it? Where has it gone? And so, as per tradition, I'm going to do the mid-year book tag. I'm going to take the questions from Larry Reed's because I really like hers. I don't know if those are the ones that she came up with, but those are very generic questions. So I'm going to use them. The first one is best book so far. Now, if you've seen my last video, you'll know which book it is because it's still one of the only, like, 1 or 2 5 stars that I've read this year, which feels, it doesn't feel right, but it is what it is. It's called Cots by Emmanuel Carrer. Emmanuel Carrer is a writer that is really super popular here in Italy, not so much in America. I don't know why English-speaking countries don't really read or popularize books that are translations, possibly because historical reasons. But here in Italy, we read a lot of translated books, and this one is translated from French. Emmanuel Carrer, such a powerful author, such a popular author. I have beef with him. I've met him several times. He has an ego and he knows it, but he's so good at writing. This is the family history of his. This recounts the whole history of not only his family from Russia and from Georgia and from France, but also the historical context of those countries while all of his uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers were growing up. Incredible. It all culminates with the death of his very controversial mother. That was a very good and reputable historian, but also she was very Russian. While being born in Georgia, she was very, very Russian. And up until the end, she would say, no, Putin would never do this, talking about the war in Ukraine, and then she had to eat her words. It was very complicated family history because Emmanuel Carrer is very, very left-leaning. Incredible. So funny and so poignant, so well researched. It was very, very emotional at times because he talks about both of his parents, and both of his parents have died in very rapid succession. Good, incredible. But then we get to worst books so far. Now, also, if you've seen that video, you'll see some of these books. I know myself, okay? I know why I don't like books, and I know when I will not like them. However, FOMO, I am so easily influenced because I read Starside. Starside by Alex Hester is a romantasy book in which the protagonist has to participate in a deadly tournament to get to the gates that would get her to the realm of magic in which the gods will bestow her magic, and she doesn't want that magic. She wants to kill the gods because they raided her village, they killed everybody except for her. And then there is a magic system based on metal, so silver is the best metal because it's the metal of the gods, and she has a silver sword. And then she meets these brooding, silent men, and they kind of ally up. But also they have this very lustful and not inconsequential, but it doesn't have any roots to be this deep relationship. The only part that was good about this book is the ending, and I think a lot of people only talk about that ending while talking about how good this book is, because everything that came before it, it's so incredibly bland. If you read any other romantasy book, you've read this book. If you read any other book that has a tournament, you've read this book. I don't want to hate my female protagonist ever, but the protagonist of Starside was so stupid. Every fucking decision she takes, it's the wrong one, and it's so blatant that it's the wrong one just because then stuff has to happen. It was so frustrating to watch, but also I was this close to DNFing it because it was so boring. Also, the writing is not good at all. I think it's incredibly flat and bland, and it has so many either grammatical mistakes or like consecutio temporum mistakes, which means that the verbs are not conjugated correctly, and it also has some continuity mistakes. I don't want to go on this, but if you have a magic system based on metals, you maybe should know that gold is very, very malleable and maybe shouldn't be used with swords and armor if it's not like magical. Maybe you should know that. I think I gave it 1.5 stars. Yeah. But I've also read On Wings of Blood because I never fucking learned my lesson. Okay, this is another romantasy in which the protagonist is a fae and she gets isekai'd, so she gets magically transported into another world that is populated by vampires. And one of the most famous and noble vampires finds her and he's like, well, you're not a fae, you're a dragon rider for some reason, but dragons are extinct, but I also want your kids because I want your blood in my bloodline. So I will put you into school because you're a idiot sandwich. This is the gist of it. And so she has to go to vampire school, which is fucking stupid because she never actually goes to class. She just does whatever she wants to do. And also the school aspect of the story, which was what I wanted out of this story, was just used so poorly to get the world building out. So she goes to a lesson, she goes to a class, and she asks a question because she knows nothing of this world. And the professors are like, you're so fucking stupid, let me recite you the whole entire history of this world. And the author does this 3 times in a row. There was one chapter that was just, she goes to class and we get info dumps about the world building. And at this point, why are editors not flagging this as fucking poor writing? I'm sorry, but this is just awful. I don't want to read the same thing all over again because you don't know how to world build your fantasy book. The whole relationship between her and the noble vampire was also very fucking stupid because the protagonist does nothing the entirety of the novel. Things happen to her, but she does absolutely nothing. And this is exacerbated, I think, by the writing because the author does not know how to describe the ambience, the scenery. At one point, the protagonist goes to a room that she has never seen, and it is described as nothing the protagonist had ever seen. Are we fucking kidding? How am I supposed to picture what you're seeing if it's just the protagonist has never seen this? Like, me either, bitch! Me either! And then I have to talk about Just Friends by Hailey Pham. I follow Hailey Pham. I was following her since the dancing days, and then I stopped following her because I think she became very, very Christian influencer. And then she dived into the waves of BookTok and BookTube, and I think her tastes are very immature, but because she started reading again during the pandemic, I can kind of excuse that. But then she began writing, and this is the first thing that she has ever written, and she just published it, which I think it's very rare for an author to just publish their first thing because it's obvious that it's not gonna be good, at least in my opinion. Writing, just like reading, it's a muscle. You have to exercise it before getting good. And Just Friends was the epitome. The epitome. What was that they said in Love Island? The epitome?
Biggest, the epitome.
Yeah, the peak, the epitome of that. It's a second chance romance between these 2 high school sweethearts, and it's a small town romance, and it's just the blandest thing that I've ever read. It's also very weirdly written because it's obvious to me that Hailey Pham used a thesaurus in a way that you shouldn't use it because synonyms cannot be used interchangeably if the context changes. There were so many examples of her using bigger and more complex words surrounded by very, very simple writing, and these complex words do not mean what I think she means in the context that she used them. The second chance romance is also stupid because the fact that they broke up a long time ago is fucking stupid. And it's also like so many things in such a little time. It's so not developed. I hate to take this verb out of Tumblr, but they were both the male lead and the female lead. They were both Mary Sue's. So 1.5. The best sequel so far. I am so happy I started this series, and it's Dungeon Crawler Carl Volume 2. I think this is Carl's Doomsday Scenario. Yeah. I am so enamored. This is a lit RPG, so it's kind of like a video game, and this talks about Carl. The whole entire earth gets raised down and he has to go down in these dungeons that are kind of like a video game, it's RPG, kind of like a Japanese RPG, with just his underpants and his cat. And this second volume I found to be very adrenalinic, also very kind of like emotional at times, which I wasn't expecting. So much more fun than the first volume, which I also loved. So it was such a good surprise. And now the worst sequel so far, which is also a spoiler for the worst book of the year, because nothing is going to surpass this. I read Bonds of Hercules. And you may ask, Alice, didn't you hate Blood of Hercules, the first book? And I was like, yes. But I was in such a bad reading slump and also an anxiety attack all in one, because I had a very, very daunting exam to do. So I was like, I need something very light. And the first book, while being very bad, because it was possibly one of the worst things I've ever read, it was also very funny. Because it was so out there. This is a dark romantasy. It's set in the future in which the Spartans have won. The author doesn't know what, but they've won. So it's all commandeered by Spartans. And there are people who have powers, they are called Thonic, and the protagonist is a super uber special princess. She grows up as kind of like white trash in a trailer park, very, very poor, and then she gets discovered as being super powerful. She has an invisible snake called Nyx, and then she goes to military school to develop these powers, and she gets enveloped in this love triangle in which she marries two other teachers. There are Greek gods and Roman gods all together. It doesn't matter. It's one of the worst things that I've ever read. Bonds of Hercules is worse. Bonds of Hercules is worse. This is one of the worst written things that I've ever read. If you want a detailed description of what did not work in this world, you can go in my Goodreads. I have some very long and very ranty reviews of these books. But just to keep you on the loop, this second book has two different plots because the author forgets that she developed a very like linear and basic plot up until the 60%. At the 60% mark, she remembers that in the first book she had kind of like put on the seeds of the another plot, and she starts another plot, and she completely forgets about the first 60%. And it never gets brought up again. And then she remembers at the 95%, and we switch POVs completely at random, and we never get to see our protagonist again. I have no words. The fact that this has been traditionally published is honestly an embarrassment for the publishing industry. Very strong words, but I stand by them. This is a 0 star, if I could. A 1 star because I have to.
Hydration break, guys, it's so fucking hot. So hot. Even if the heat wave is over, fucking hot. A new release you want to read. I have, I think, 4, and they're all very different. You'll see what I mean. The first one is Honor and Heresy by Max Francis. I think Max Francis is a very well-known figure in the Instagram world. I have no idea who that is, but Honor and Heresy, it's a dark academia queer book in which the protagonist and the very grumpy and mysterious scholar have to explore this library that it's apparently populated by deadly creatures, and it's enormous. Are the things that get me going. A library, dark academia, very mysterious characters. I think this is going to be very, very good. Then I have The Open Era by Edward Schmidt. The Open Era, it's about it's kind of like if Challenger had no Zendaya. It talks about tennis players and they're very, very competitive rivals, and then something happens and they have to kind of like meet each other halfway through the tennis court. This is all I know. I love books about sports, and I love books about tennis, and I love queer books, so fingers crossed that this is very good. The third one, I don't even know how to explain it. One of my friends found this book on Instagram and sent it to me, and when I googled it, it had a 4.05 on Goodreads, which is very high for a book called Doppelbanger, in which the protagonist manages to clone himself and then enters a relationship with his clone. I think that's the basic plot. Apparently everybody loves it. And I want to know, is it possible to love a book in which the protagonist bangs his clone? Apparently it is. Apparently it is. And then the fourth one, it's a little bit more serious. It's the Iron Garden Sutra by 83. I'm going to read you the blurb because I think it's so fucking cool. In outer space, no one can hear your prayers. A death monk and a team of researchers are trapped on board a long-lost spaceship of the dead. In this darkly philosophical murder mystery for fans of Becky Chambers, me, and Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Never read it, but Becky Chambers I love. And I haven't read much sci-fi this year, which is my favorite genres of all time. So most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. The first one, it's my most anticipated book of this year, is Villa Coco by André Changrier. André Changrier wrote Less, which is my favorite book of all time. One of my favorites, but it's a close second. He writes queer books like there's nothing to it. He has such a way with a funny book that is also very poignant and very deep and emotional. In Villa Coco, it's a coming-of-age story set in the Tuscan hills. And I trust André Changrier to talk about Italy because his fiancé is Italian, so I trust him a lot. He is here all the time. And then of course I have Heartstopper Volume 6. This is the last volume of Heartstopper, and I don't want to talk about it because I'm going to get emotional, but this series found me at a very, very crucial point of my life in which I was coming of age, and it really, really helped me. And then I have, Mortal Game by Alison Saft. Now, you know, if you know me, you know, I love books about chess. I love them to death. I don't know what it is. I love them, okay? And Alison Saft apparently is writing, or well, will be publishing a book that is a fantasy in which a grandmaster, like a chess grandmaster, is the protagonist. Sign me the fuck up! I read some of her other books, which I think they are always very cool in atmosphere, but the love story is always lacking. But this one is sapphic. So fingers crossed. And of course, the last one, The Last King of Fairies by Cassandra Clare. I've read every Cassandra Clare book, and I just need to. This is a Shadowhunter novel. I just need to finish it because this is going to be the last trilogy that she's ever going to write about the Shadowhunters. It's unfortunately the sequel of one of my least favorite books by Cassie Clare, which is the Los Angeles series, but I love the fairies that she writes, so again, fingers crossed. Biggest surprise, I have two, and these are very good books, okay? The first one, you'll see in the aforementioned last video, I read the first book in the Elrico Manibane saga. This is a fantasy book from the 60s, 70s, such a classic, good fantasy book that has very, very original elements to it. The protagonist is the king of this country, this island that is supposed to be this islands of conqueror. They have a very deep bond with dragons. They're all very strong, physically strong, but they lack empathy. They're not empathetic at all. They just want a bloodshed every time. But Eric was born very frail. He has very pale skin. He has very dark, deep red eyes, and he knows magic. He knows magic. He's a very powerful magician, but he also challenges the ethic of using said magic. And the book starts when his beloved, who's also his cousin, but we're not going to talk about that, gets kidnapped by another cousin that wants the throne. And I was very surprised because it's a very short book, but it's so dark retro fantasy. If you ever seen those, I don't know, edits on TikTok, it's exactly like that. If you want a very cool story that it's very reminiscent of the 60s, 70s, I recommend it, but it's so good. And then I am in the middle of, in which I mean I read 6 books of this saga in 10 days. I started a new dame. I started Ballad of Sword and Wine. Ballad of Sword and Wine, it's one of the most revered dame out there because it's like 90% political intrigue. Well, no, it's kind of like 80% political intrigue, 10% war crimes. and then 10% romance. But the romance, it's so deep and so romantic. But the political intrigue, it's a Robin Hood level of political intrigue. Like, we talk about the price of grain so much, and I am so deeply invested into it. It's incredible. The protagonist is the 8th son of a very scorned general, and that it's believed to have been in cahoots with the enemy during a very big raid that left 30,000 people dead. And so he gets thrown into jail, and when he reemerges, he's a completely different person, and he's so conniving. He wants power, and he wants revenge. And he meets one of the sons of the generals that really, really hate him, and they develop this relationship that it's everything. It's everything. And it's very well constructed. Every twist and turn, it's everybody backstabbing each other at the Chinese court because the emperor has just been murdered. Wonderful. It's so well constructed, so well crafted. I cannot wait to read the last 2 volumes. Unfortunately, the last one gets translated in August, and I cannot. I am buzzing to finish the series. It's going to be incredible. The finale, it will be something. Favorite new author, it's the author of Ballad of Sword and Wine. I think the pronunciation is Tan Jiuqing. That one, it's incredible. I read another series by her. I did not know that it was the same author. It's called Nanshan. Nanshan is good. Nanshan is very good. It's a 4-star, I think, series. This one, however, 5 stars. Even though not all of the volumes are 5-star material, this series as a whole, 5-6 stars. New fictional crush. Every time, every year, I will say I never get fictional crushes. I just don't get them. I don't think it's a weird concept, but it's a weird concept for me. I never get enraptured, especially if it's a character that is supposed to be in a relationship in the story. I'm like, yeah, they're good together. They're good together. So no new fictional crush. A book that made you cry. Not necessarily a book. I'm going to talk about manhwa, so a Korean web series that it's all comics. It's Taming the Tiger. Taming the Tiger, it's a historical story in which he's called the Hound of the Emperor, so he goes and kills people, meets this man who is very much mixed blood because he's very tall, very tan, very muscled up, and they, again, develop this relationship in which only them get each other because they're both in very difficult positions in the court and generally in the population of this country, and they just get each other. And you finish the story and you're like, oh, it's a happy ending. No, there are epilogue stories. If you don't want your day ruined, do not read the epilogue stories, which are also very, very sweet, but also fucking soul-crushing. I cried a lot reading Taming the Tiger. So much. A book that made me happy. A book from one of my favorite authors. This is a year of favorites. I read The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. This is an Arthurian novel, so we talk about Arthurian legends. Our protagonist wants to become a knight in Camelot. He goes to Camelot. Big fucking problem. Arthur has just died. So there's no more round table. And the protagonist with the only knights left, they ask for a miracle and a miracle appears, but they do not know if it's God, if it's the actual Christian God, or if there's like a more ancient power to England that it's waking up. Beautiful. The way that Lev Grossman weaves in queer character into his stories, it's wonderful. It's a tad, I think, too slow in some parts, but at the end, it's a wonderful story about Arthurian legends, about fairies, about the old versus new religion. It's also one of the best written novels that I've ever read because the writing style is so beautiful. It's so elegant. It's insane how he weaves in these beautiful sentences and then like dick joke. Only Lev Grossman. The most beautiful book I bought or received, I definitely bought this one. They finally translated Hated Bribery into Italian, and this is the Italian edition, which doesn't seem much, but it has frayed edges, which I'm partial about, but it's very cute. I'm coming to the cottage, it's very cute. But also, and it's something that the Italian edition never does, it has illustration inside. It's very beautiful hand-drawn illustration. It also has a bookmark that you can cut out, that I'm never going to cut out, but like the cottage and them And I think it's such a beautiful edition, and I can't wait to buy the second volume, but it's because it's also illustrated. And then the last questions. What books do you need to read before the end of the year? I have a ton, but I'm going to be very speedy about them because they're all, I think, Italian books. I really, really want to read Il Senno Perduto, so The Lost Sanity. This is a retelling of the Orlando Furioso. I have no idea how you say that in English. I'm going to insert it right here. But it's the story of this man going mad in very ancient times, and then they go to the moon. Weird. It's something that I had to study during middle school and high school, and this is everybody told me that this is fucking cool. Look at the title hedges. And another retelling. This is Magia Nera, Black Magic. This is a retelling of the Papessa Giovanna. So there's this figure, mythological figure of a woman pope that practiced black magic. And talks about witches, talks about very ancient deep magic. And I mean, look at this stunning edition. This is very, very, very gothic. Oh, this was a very, very kind gift from the publishing house. This is Tainaran. This is an epistolary novel. It's a sci-fi novel. It talks about an alien city that receives tons of letters from all around the galaxy, and it has inside the city a portal to another reality. This is a printer that I know. It's a very, very short book, and I want to read it so badly because it has everything that I want. Especially, it has a blurb from Jack Vandermeer, which is the other author that I want to read. This is Absolution, the Italian edition, which is a wonderful edition with a clear cover, and an illustration from one of my favorite illustrators of all time, Lorenzo Ceccotti. This is the fourth book in the Area X trilogy, that it's now not a trilogy. And this, I think it's 3 stories about the first and last missions to the southern reach, the Area X. And the last one, this is Vita Sommersa, which means submerged life, by Tara Menon. It talks about female friendship in the face of adversities. Adversities is a tsunami. This time, very, very beachy novel. They assure me that it's going to be sublime, simply sublime. So this is the one that I'm going to keep on myself for the beach. The video is over. I'm super hot. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to see you in the next video. If you want some socials, they're very fun time there, especially Goodreads, TikTok. If you want my reviews, they're there. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Mwah!